Broadcasting from Orchard Park, New York,
and Boca Raton, Florida,
it's the Freight 360 podcast. From freight broker sales tips to sports talk, this podcast is all about helping you grow as a freight broker. We're your hosts, Nate Cross
and Benjamin Kowalski.
Let's talk freight. Welcome back, episode 126 of the Freight 360 podcast. Well, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that I lost a bet with Mr. Trey Griggs. I'm wearing a Pat Mahomes jersey right now. But don't worry, Trey. I've got a little something special for you coming up in this episode. And Josh Allen is not done playing. He will be playing professional sports this month, in the month of February. And we'll get to that in a second, talking about the Pro-Am Pebble Beach tournament. So it is, as we record this Wednesday, it is this February 2nd, 2022, and it's called Tuesday, even though it's a Wednesday, but it's like all the twos. Only time in our lifetime we're going to have it. Yeah, 2-2-22, man. Only time we're going to have it in our lifetime. Imagine if it was 2-2-22-22, so like 200 years from now. But
other interesting thing, this is the Chinese New Year, or I think it's the Chinese New Year, but it's the year of the tiger. I think as of like Monday, they celebrate like the Lunar New Year, whatnot, and didn't make the connection. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I guess that's why the Bengals finally made it to a Super Bowl.
Let's just talk sports first. So this episode is going to be about adding agents to your brokerage. We're going to talk sports. Let's get this done with. So crazy first couple rounds of playoffs. Or first three rounds, really. So, divisional round. The only, favored team that advanced was the Chiefs, and then they were favored by, 6.5 points to beat the Bengals at home, and they lost, go figure, in overtime. I was so hoping, that whole game, I was like, man, I hope this game goes to overtime. Cincinnati wins the coin toss and goes down and scores a touchdown like the Chiefs did to the Bills the week before. But the Chiefs won. So Twitter was blowing up. Everyone, like Josh Allen, all the other Bills players were all tweeting like, man, this hurts. Like, they're going to do it again. And then they had to punt. And Cincinnati, or whatever, I forget if it was a punt or a turnover or whatever, but Cincinnati got the ball and went down. And their rookie kicker kicked the game-winning field goal because it was next score wins at that point. And the Bengals are going to the Super Bowl, man. Wow. So Bengals-Rams. It's good. You know what's awesome? Is I don't really care who wins. Yeah. But I'm going to root for my AFC team, the Bengals. I mean, I think, although, the Rams, dude, they have a nasty good team this year. But NFC, I don't follow NFC as closely as the AFC. So I'm happy for all you Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, Southern Ohio folk that are on the Bengal train. And maybe it's the Chinese New Year, the year of the Tiger, he said? Yeah,
all our industry colleagues at TQL and what's the other big brokerage up in that neck of the woods? Is it Integrity?
I think TQL's the big one in Cincy, right? There's like three
Integrity
offices.
And TQL.
And their headquarters is there. But a lot of brokers. I bet there's some Bengals fans out there, so go Bengals. I'll say that to the end. But so here's the deal. If you're on YouTube, we're in a youth extra large Pat Mahomes Kansas City Chiefs jersey. So Trey, dude, I'm not a big guy. I'm like 5'10", 180. And, I mean, Trey, we met you in person. We golfed with you down in, where's that, Lauderdale or whatever, down in Florida last year. And I remember him being, smaller than us. But, this is a youth jersey that I'm wearing right now. I hop on the video, and Ben, you're like, man, you look
your
huge
arms
right
look
now.
enormous.
I feel like I'm ripped. I should just start wearing youth clothes. You know what's funny is I always buy jerseys bigger than I would normally wear clothes because I wear them over a hoodie or a jacket. So I ordered a Josh Allen and a Matt Milano new Bills jersey for next season because I'm already looking forward to next year's Super Bowl and the Bills season. But I got my Josh Allen one. I ordered an extra large. I usually wear a medium or a large depending on what kind of fit it is, but I'll go a little bit bigger on a jersey. Dude, I was swimming in it. I just send them back. And so I go from wearing an oversized Josh Allen jersey to literally a youth Pat Mahomes jersey. So Trey, I He's got to weigh like 130 pounds.
Big things come in small packages. Trey definitely has a monster drive for a youth large on the golf course.
That's true. That's true. And if you remember back to that picture of him hitting out of the bunker, he did not make that putt. So yeah, that's good. Anyway, sports. It's the Pro Bowl this coming weekend. I don't even normally watch it, but I'm looking forward to the Super Bowl. We'll talk more about that next week. But I'm glad to see golf getting back in. So the Pebble Beach is the Pro-Am, and you're the bigger golf enthusiast than me. Do they pair a professional? Or I'm sorry, it's the pro celeb. What is it? Pro celebrity?
I don't.
Celebrity Pro?
I don't know what this event is. I'll have to look it up real quick.
No, it's the Pro-Am. So, yeah, so there's Pro-Am, which means it's a professional and an amateur, whatever you say, however you call it. But you got guys like Josh Allen, Mookie Betts, professional athletes that are playing in this tournament, and I think it's really cool. And I was talking with somebody. I'm in a virtual golf league, and I was playing this past Monday. And I was asking, I'm like, man, it's crazy to think that these professional athletes will play a second sport during their regular season. And we were talking about, we're like, well, think about like football. Golf is probably the only sport that a coach will not lose their mind over if their quarterback's playing it, because there's a lot of benefit to golf, right? If you have the time to do it, right? So like a bye week or something like that. Mobility, flexibility, strength, low impact, very low risk of injury.
Yep.
Right?
You know, I
mean, you don't want your quarterback going out fighting MMA matches.
Dude, I watched...
Right? Or going playing rugby.
Randomly, I watched the special on Dion on Disney Channel over the weekend on that 3 days where Deion Sanders was in the playoffs against the Pirates for the Braves, and he flew down back to play the Falcons versus the Dolphins, and then flew back to play that baseball game that night, and just all the controversy around it in '92. I
forgot that he played two sports. Well, there's a couple.
Yeah, him and Bo Jackson, and then no one after that ever again. Mostly because of how that all went down.
Who was the other one you said?
So Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders were the two multiple sports at kind of their time. I don't know if there was. I'm sure there was maybe another one, but
so you think about guys that have transitioned, like Tebow, right? Tim Tebow went and tried to pursue a career in baseball, and he played for a number of years in the farm system. And I don't know, I like Tebow better on TV than I do at his age and skill level now, trying to play pro when he's in his 30s. So, but it's crazy to think about. But yeah, the Pebble Beach Pro-Am, that's in, I couldn't even tell you, where's Pebble Beach? Do you know?
It's in California. It's there's three courses. It's like west. Spyglass, Pebble Beach, and Monterey are the three courses. I think
that's right. And this is the first year, because last year they only used two of the courses. I think they're using all three this year, if I remember correctly. So back to golf, man. It's kind of it's fun. It's exciting. So, well, good stuff. We're gonna talk all about agents today. Usually we save our listener questions until the end, and we do a Q&A. But this question came in from a guy, and he basically asked, "How do I hire my first agent? What kind of commission do I pay? What do I do if they have a non-compete? What should my contract look like?" And there's a lot to unpack here, because some of you may not even know what an agent is. I've worked in the agent world the majority of my time in transportation, close to a decade now, and the amount of folks that have switched from like that W-2, like the TQL model or like the Coyote model or C.H. Robinson model to becoming an agent, they're like, what is this? Like, it doesn't make sense. It's confusing. Am I not an employee? So we're going to unpack all that in today's episode. And then we do have a couple more questions at the end that we're going to get to. So anyway, welcome back to Freight 360. Another week here. Every week we're always giving you guys good content. Some new YouTube videos dropping. We've been doing about one a week. I think we might have missed a couple around New Year's there, but some good stuff coming up. Contingent cargo insurance. We've got getting started with no experience. All this stuff, right? These are questions that you guys are either asking us or people are typing into Google, and we're here, and we're giving you guys the content. So share us with your friends. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Right? Give us that rating. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube, or give us a 5 stars on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you're listening to us. So, yeah, good stuff, man. Let's give a shout out to our good friends over at DAT Freight and Analytics, to be specific.
Taking the guesswork out of freight with DAT. The DAT Load Board Network is the largest on-demand freight marketplace in North America, connecting freight brokers with available capacity on any lane. Grow your business with tools that allow you to find new business partners. Plus, you can quickly qualify and onboard new carriers. And with the industry's leading freight rate data, you can make clear and confident pricing decisions. Check out the show notes for a free month of DAT Power, Express, or Trucker's Edge.
Yes. So actually, ironically, when we had Trey on the one time, he reminded us that he used to work at DAT. And even though I'm wearing a Mahomes jersey, I forgot I wanted to play this earlier. But this is just a little snippet of my hometown Buffalo Bills, our shout song. It's literally from the Isley Brothers from back in like the 70s. The the Bills organization hired somebody like 15 years ago or 20 years ago to like make our own custom version. Here's a little clip.
The Bills make me wanna shout, kick your heels up and shout, throw your hands up and shout, throw your head back and shout. Come on now, the Bills are making it happen now. We got the spirit, just watch it happen now. Hey, 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 let's go Buffalo, let's go Buffalo, let's go.
Yeah, that's my Bill shout song. We all know that the original song from every wedding we've ever gone to, right?
Yep.
So, that's my last take on the Bills. So let's talk.
Let me ask you something. I'd like to kick this off with you telling me. I'd like to really know what are the real pros, but also the cons of even considering, or just the agency model in general. Like what are the advantages? Why would any company want to do this, and why would any person want to be an agent?
So I'll answer this first through the lens of the broker that's going to decide to be an agent. And then I'll talk to you on the perspective of the brokerage company looking to add agents, okay? So, pros and cons. Big difference between being a freight agent versus an employee for a brokerage is that you are autonomous and you're on your own, you're independent, right? You don't work for the company. You're not employed by the company. You are an independent contractor. The IRS labels you or defines you in that 1099 category. So similar to like someone who's a contractor that works on houses or an independent sales rep for a company, that's exactly what you are. So as a freight agent, you are not bound by things like non-competes, non-solicitation clauses, because you're not an employee. There's no employment agreement. There's an independent contractor agreement. Other pros, much higher commission, because you are usually coming to the table already experienced, already trained, knowledgeable in freight brokering. You're bringing a customer book of business with you that you've already got established, and you're going to set your own hours, do as much or as little as you want, and your paycheck will be the reflection of how much work and productivity that you've had, okay? So those are the pros in a nutshell. The cons. Just like I said, you're independent. That can be a con. If you need to have a supervisor or a boss that tells you you need to make 60 calls a day, or you need to hit 4K a week in GP, or you need to be at your desk at 7:30 or 8 o'clock every single morning. If that's how you operate, that's a con to being an agent, because you don't have that structure. You don't have someone telling you this is how you have to do it, okay? So if you're brand new to freight, the agent model is often not a good choice for you. There's a couple of situations where maybe you go work for an agent and they mentor you and they train you and they coach you and they put you through some kind of new broker thing like that. So those are kind of some of the cons. No base salary, right? You're not an employee, so they cannot pay you a base salary. Maybe they can give you a draw or something like that to try and work it out. That would all depend on your agreement. if you're with there's some good companies and bad companies out there, but if you get with a risky or not so good company, they can cut you whenever they want, right? Boom. You're not an employee. They just say, we're done with you. You're not broken with us anymore. And they're doing all your billing for you. So now you're kind of, up creek without a paddle, or whatever that phrase is. You can't invoice your customers or, do anything. It's all housed in their system. Other cons, let's see here. That's really it. If you're not, they don't withhold taxes. You have to file your quarterly estimate. So if you're not good with like accounting and finance stuff on a personal level, you're going to have to think, well, I have to do this on a business level. Now I'm a contractor, so I'm going to get commission checks every week or twice a month or however your company does it. They're not withholding taxes and paying your state or the Fed on your behalf. You have to pay it yourself in quarterly estimates. And oh, by the way, you have to pay the full amount, where it's normally split in half, right? No, it's 15.3% employment tax, split half and half. Usually 7.65 is paid by your employer, and 7.65 is paid by you as a payroll tax. And that's like your FICA, Social Security, Medicare, whatever it is, right? That's not done. It's not withheld. It's not paid by them. So those are some cons. Does that make sense?
Oh, perfect. Absolutely. And I think with some other things to mention, right? Who's responsible for your equipment, right? Like your phone lines, buying computers, right? Computer software monthly service fees, right? Apart from, I believe, usually your TMS is usually covered, or do you guys like bill your agents a portion for it?
Yeah, there's a gray area. So, like, for example, most agents have to provide their own computer, their own phone, their own internet service, their own marketing or promotional materials. There's some gray area. So, like, even though you're not an employee, the brokerage company you're an agent for, they can give you, like, all their digital marketing products and their logo and stuff like that. They can send you some swag for your customers. They're going to give you access to their TMS platform. Some companies do and some don't charge for technology, such as load board access, GPS tracking usage, you name it, right? Some do and some don't. It just really all depends. Every company's different. Some companies don't have the margin to be able to pay for certain things because all they care about is, I'm going to give you a super high sign-on bonus, a big commission split, and you take care of the rest. Where others will say, we'll give you like everything, but pay you a little bit less. And then there's the good, healthy ones that are typically in the middle that pay you a very strong, reasonable commission, and then everything else is taken care of by them. So
let's. I wanted to hear the company side too.
Really brief.
Can you?
Yeah, the company side, right? So just really briefly, pros and cons. Pros: you're adding sales folks to your organization, right? So let's go. I'm going to give you the 70% commission model as an example. Now, not every company pays their agents 70% commission. Some pay 50, some pay 60. Some will pay you more depending on how much volume you're doing. So it's going to be contingent on your productivity that month or that quarter or whatever. So you add salespeople on, and for every dollar that they make in profit, at 70%, you're keeping the other 30%. You're making 30 cents for every dollar that they produce, right? And they're producing their own leads. They're doing all their own business. You're just giving them a place to operate legally under your authority. The con, you have to cash flow all that business for them. So if you use a factoring company, it's more money in factoring fees that you're paying. And now you got to say, ooh, is their margin high enough? Is this good enough business that it's worth it with our factoring rates and deals? If you're
can you pause that?
You got to have enough cash on hand.
And I'm curious, like in the weeds with that, like, are there agencies that are able, because you don't really have the control to set minimums, but I think to some degree they should be able to, right? As in, like, hey,
you can.
So, like, what is that? I mean, do you have like a break even with where you guys are? Like, hey, $75 a load is.
So, yeah, so like I'm with Pierce Worldwide, and what I do is I look at an agent's business before they come on, and I try to determine right then and there, is your business a good fit? We don't have a minimum requirement for what they have to do, dollar amount wise or margin wise, but I make it very clear that I explain how it works, right? There's only so much meat on the bone. And if we're giving you commission and we have to pay for cash flowing, well, it's not a direct cost. We don't factor, but we have to pay for a back office team that's doing your billing, the amount of time that they spend invoicing your customers and fixing your problems. We have to pay for any special tools that they need. And if their margin is only 5%, right, there's not enough meat on the bone. It's not worth anyone's time. And I make that very clear. You can have high and low months. A fairly standard benchmark in this industry is like 10%. If you're not at 10%, you're not really developed enough as a broker that anyone's going to want your business. Caveat, right? Some people waited out a non-compete for a year or 2 years, and they're getting back in the business, rebuilding. They're going to be a little slim on margins, and that's fine. But long term, you've got to get to a certain level. Now, there's other companies. I used to work for one. They wouldn't even bring you on if you didn't have a certain margin. And if you didn't hit a certain margin, so like let's say 15%, you're never going to make more than 50% commission. If you never made more than 20% margin, you're never going to get paid 70% commission. Like there's certain companies that have that. And also some companies will say there's a minimum profit amount per load that you have to hit for us to break even. We don't have that. Previous company was $50 on a truckload. So if you didn't make $50 profit on a truckload, or it's not even the profit, it's the amount that the company would retain. So let's say, for example, you make a $200 profit on a load, right? And 70% goes to you, so that's $140, and then 60 comes back to the company. You're good. Now let's say you only make $100 on a load, which a lot of new brokers, that's their model, right? Thin margin, get in the door, show consistency. You make $100, 70% goes to you at $70, 30 goes back to the company. Can't do it. We're going to keep at least $50 on every single truckload, which means now I get 50 and you get 50. So there's certain companies that they have that in their contracts, and it's because of their business model and their overhead expenses and everything else that goes into it. So every company is different. So that's a downside of being the brokerage company to bring on agents is you have to take an honest look in the mirror at your financial stability and what you can afford. And it's a tweaking game, right? This is a malleable topic and a thing where it's ever changing, ever developing. So if you bring on a bad agent, doesn't fit your needs, don't keep them there. You're gonna have to tell them, and, with a reasonable amount of respect and heads up time, like we're not a good fit long term. I'm sorry. We'll give you 30 or 60 days to close out what you got, but we're gonna need you to look for a new home because it's just not good business for us. And that's an honest way to deal with it.
So let me ask you this, for the guys that are out there and girls that are out there that own their own, brokerages that are considering bringing on some agents, right? I think the primary reason is, hey, it's going to give us the ability to increase our revenues, increase our sales without increasing our fixed expenses, right? Like not bringing on the extra salary, not having and the risk, right? The biggest risk and the biggest expense for most brokerages, everyone that I've ever worked with, is the number that you have to pay to gamble on salespeople, right? Like we always talk, like there's a 95 out of 100 failure rate, in most of the large brokerages. It's related to this. So, they're literally throwing, the better part of a year's salary at 95 out of 100 people, knowing that is not going to pay off, so that those 4 or 5 people, right, do. It's a big risk, big gamble. Agency model allows you to kind of vet them, know whether or not they've got a book, bring on their revenue without that risk. As an owner, like what are the things they need to consider before making the jump into the agency, or like where should they be? Is there like a certain amount of revenue or back office support they should have before they consider this or make the jump?
Yeah, so I want to go back a second. You talked about risk, right? Think about this. You don't know anything about having agents and you want to start an agent program with your company. What happens if you hire the wrong person and they defile your business name? They get a bunch of negative reviews on DAT from carriers with your company's name attached to it. They screw something up as a representative of your company and you're left paying out a $60,000 claim out of pocket yourself. Things like that, right? You don't know what they're doing or what they're saying on the phone because you don't have control. You don't have the control over them, or you're not in front of them to be able to hear and see that. So, to your question, where should they be? And this is generalized because there's different situations. I typically think someone should be a successful broker for at least a couple of years before they look to go independent as an agent, and that's average. Okay,
that's for the person considering it, right? This is the person with the book of business, not necessarily the company, right? You should be there. You're saying at least a couple years.
Yes. So so the agent you're bringing on should have a couple of years in the business, right? You also, as a brokerage owner, should have a couple of solid years running your own brokerage, knowing how your back office operates, knowing your cash flow. The same way you have to figure out how quickly you can grow your book and not have it hit you in the cash flow side too hard. That's going to impact you as a company owner when you add an agent, depending on the size of their book of business. So, if let's say you're a brokerage owner and you do $2 million a year in business. Well, you shouldn't go out there and bring on a $10 million agent that's going to 5 or 6x your business the next day. You can't handle it. You don't have the cash flow. You don't have the manpower to invoice and collect. You don't have the manpower to add carriers on and receive invoices and do all the paperwork side. You're just not ready for it. Slow and steady wins the race. Every single time that I read The Tortoise and the Hare, the tortoise wins every time. Never changes.
So that brings up a really good point, right? So, this is an objective thing that everybody can kind of work through if you are considering this, right? Figure out how many loads you're running on a weekly or monthly basis, right? And then ask yourself a question, if I'm hearing you right, like, what is their capacity, right? Hey, if you're, running 75 loads a week, right? Could your team handle 150, right? Or could you handle only 25 more? Because this is a pretty quantifiable number. When you're evaluating any agent, or potential agent, you should be able to look at their book, see what they're doing on average, and realize whether or not you could handle that additional workload, right?
Yeah. So, you know how we talk about with prospecting a lot that at the beginning you want like a checklist and you go through it, and then eventually you find your voice and you get comfortable and it becomes second nature. The same thing happens when you're adding agents to your company. The first few agents that you add on, or that first period of time, you need to be very, very detailed and go through their book and their numbers very, very, very detailed, because you've never done it before. It's foreign to you. Over time, you'll know what to look out for. You'll know the red flags and the good signs. So like for me, for example, I don't have to go that detailed with an agent on their book of business on paper like I used to. I would ask like, hey, show me your commission reports from the last couple of months, or show me your year to date. Let me see your volume. Let me see your profit per load, your total profit, your margin percentage, customer count, things like that. And then what I have figured out means more in the agent world than that is, are they a good fit for the culture of your company? Are they going to be flexible, and are you going to be flexible working together as they grow? Because most folks that become independent, it just opens the floodgates for them. And now they're like, wow, I can do whatever I want. And typically if they're coming from a big box brokerage to a smaller mid-sized agent-based company, they can go touch all these customers that they couldn't touch before. So they're going to be able to blow up. So those really, like, what I look at is how long have you been a brokerage? And you could just tell in a conversation when they talk about their customers, you'll know if they know what they're talking about, right? I've talked to people that are like, yeah, I got customers. And I'm like, oh, cool. You told me you were a driver, though. They're like, yeah, my customers are TQL and CH Robinson. I'm like, those are brokers. Like, you're not a broker. Yeah. You're a carrier, or you're a dispatcher. Your customer needs to be an actual shipping company. That's how this works. So, and it's in, you kind of get this intuition. You figure out very quickly if they're a good fit for your company or if they're not. So the same thing goes if you're looking to become an agent for a company. You should be able to tell very, very quickly if, what's the vibe of this conversation? What's the tone that's being set here? Is it like, are they trying to treat me like I'm an employee? Or are they treating me like I'm a family member, like I'm part of their organization, and I'm welcome, and I'm a team member now, not just someone that has to hit X amount of calls per day? There's preference. Everyone wants a different kind of agent, and every agent wants a different kind of company to work with. So
it's interesting, and I think it's one of those things that really isn't focused on enough in our industry, really is culture, right? Like who you want to be spending your days with, who you want to surround yourself with, what are the types of people you want to be working with, what are the type of company that you're in, right? a lot of people have built this company just by, doing the next thing without ever taking a step away and objectively thinking about this, right? I was listening to, I'm reviewing a book, Tools of Titans, and they talk a lot about this. Like, you need to take time away from the business to work on it, not just in it, right? And until you can take a step away and objectively look at some of these things and ask yourself some of the questions that we're, posing and kind of go back and forth, right? This is going to help you work a little closer towards either considering it more or maybe considering it less and deciding when is a good time to actually make the jump into the agency.
Yeah, here's another thing to think about too. If you're bringing on agents, you're responsible to take care of them, right? They don't just come in and know everything about your company. It's a lot of time you got to spend. I don't want to call it babysitting, but it's developing these agents, right? It's onboarding, it's acclimating them to your procedures and your the standard way that you guys operate. When you change something that your company does, you got to make sure your agents, who are all remote, are all aware and trained on how that works. If an agent has a special billing situation with one of their customers, you have to adapt and be able to hop in that third-party billing system and spend the time to invoice their customers differently than the rest of your customers. So there's a lot of time that it takes, and that's why when I vet people out myself, it's got to be someone that I like and I want to spend my time working with every single day. Otherwise, it's just frustrating. Like we talked about in plenty of our content, like there's the people that you talk to that they're going to chew your ear off for an hour and you don't actually accomplish anything in the conversation, right? And it's like, ugh. And there's agents like that. They don't produce and they just want to chew your ear off all day long and remind you that you're not their boss and the contract states this. And it's like, well, I don't. You might be a good broker in your mind or a good agent in your mind, but I would really like you to go work somewhere else because I don't. It's not a good fit for me or my organization, and you'll find that.
Yep.
And then you'll get the ones that are really awesome, and you feel like you're not even working a day in your life when you get to spend time working with them. So you're right. We don't talk about culture enough in this industry, and it's a big part of it. We've seen all the big lawsuits and stuff like that from companies that had toxic work environments, and we all have bad days at work. But if your work has a good culture and a good overall climate, you're not going to bitch about it the way that you would about a company that's just toxic, right?
So let me ask you this: Are there any red flags that agents or W-2 brokers that are considering jumping into the agency model should be looking for? Like, are there any consistent things that if you see this or hear this is probably worth moving on to the next option?
Yep. As an agent, you should not be held to a non-compete, a non-solicitation agreement. Your customers need to belong to you, and you should have protection that no one else can, so the company can't go and back solicit your customers. Say they were to cut you or something like that. There should be a time length on that. Because at the end of the day, it should be a partnership. What's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. As long as we work together, it's great. But if we part ways for whatever reason, don't poach mine and I won't poach yours. And it's got to be written out very clearly in your agent operating agreement. Other red flags, if you're an agent, if you ask the hard-to-ask questions, they don't give you an answer or get back to you with an answer, their level of competence as a brokerage company is not at a level where it should be, where you should feel comfortable to give your business or a portion of your business to them.
Well, that's a good point.
Other red flags.
I mean,
do they, how long have they been in business? 6 months? No, thank you. 40 years? Obviously, they've got some.
Well, you pointed out another really important risk, right? Which is from the person who's built this book of business, right? Like, you're trusting this organization to handle your customers, right? Handle their invoices, make sure they do it accurately, right? Like, people lose customers for having these things done incorrectly. Like, there is a risk, right? So, and I know in all of the message boards that we see and, in our Facebook group, you see this question a lot, like, oh, it seems like everybody just wants to chase the highest commission percentage when they look for a house for their brokerage or their book of business. And the reality is like, some of these numbers, and I know you and I had this conversation, are too good to be true. If they're offering you like 90 or 80% or 85% commission splits, like, there's not really enough meat on the bone for them to operate a legitimate company that can actually support your operations.
Yeah, do they have fairly paid, competent back
yes.
office employees that are working with your customers, or are they hiring some,
VAs in another country that
some kid right out of high school that is getting paid minimum wage to send invoices, right? Because you got to, where you give in a higher commission rate, you're giving something. You're giving something up, right? So if you're going to offer, I've seen like, hey, we're going to pay you 90% for the whole year for your first year, or 80% forever, and it's like there's not enough. There's not enough meat on the bone to have a well-oiled machine that'll run. Pay competent people. The owner still makes good, healthy profits, and we have extra money for upgrading things as needed, like hiring more bodies, upgrading software, stuff like that. Yeah. So, yeah, it's not all about commission. It's in my eyes, your compensation package is a big part of it. So, what percentage are they paying you? What are you required to pay for? How often are they paying you? Are they paying you upon invoice, or do you have to wait for them to receive the payment from your customer to get paid?
That's a big
things. One. Technology, right? What load boards do you have access to? What TMS platform are you using? What integrations do you have to streamline your process? Can you set up a carrier very quickly? Can you onboard a customer quickly? Can I get a credit bump quickly if my customer is at their line and they got a big project that I'm working on? And then culture. Culture to me is like, it's not. I'm not going to rank it like number 1, 2, or 3. It's an overarching thing. Like, what is their view and their culture and perspective when it comes to being flexible on upgrading a system, or maybe getting something special for you that you need for your customers, or increasing credit when maybe that customer doesn't look perfect on paper. Right, that's culture.
There was one that we kind of breezed over, but I think is important to emphasize. Right, is that most brokers that are working in the W-2 model don't get paid until their customer pays their bills. And in the agency model, right, you're usually going to get a choice where some will offer you upon delivery or delivered load at the end of that week, you get cut a check. And that means they're then responsible for going and collecting from your customer. Like, you've got money in hand. And that is a big benefit, right? Not having to wait until the receivables come in, just taking that risk off the table. And I think that's really important to consider if anybody out there is deciding this, even for a company owner, right? Like, if you're going to bring on agents and you're typically used to paying your brokers when they, their customers pay, this is a completely different cash flow than what you're typically doing.
Yeah, you're fronting money. Just like you're fronting money to carriers with a quick pay, you're quick paying commissions essentially. So I want to go through some of the questions the actual questions that we were asked. How do I hire my first agent? We already just kind of talked through that. You've got to be in a position where you're able to support additional business. You're competent enough to answer their questions. You have enough time to manage them. Okay. The next question was, what's the commission percentage? It depends on what you're able to provide. And, if you can only pay them 50%, but you're going to give them basically everything that they want and you're taking a gamble on them, that's fine. If you get someone that'll do that, that's fine. If you're going to pay, a higher percentage, like 60 or 70%, you can kind of take back a little bit, right? I expect this person to bring to the table a profitable book of business with customers that pay on time, that don't have a bunch of billing issues. An agent that is, responsive to me when I have questions about one of their customers or a claim or something like that. It's very subjective, and so there's not a right or wrong answer there. 50 to 70 is an average range. What if they have a non-compete? Your new agent. Well, you can be held liable if you are knowingly violating or taking part in the violation of their non-compete agreement. We know non-competes are not so enforceable when it comes to freight brokering. Non-solicits can be, but either way, even if a non-compete is not enforceable, you're going to have to spend time to hire an attorney to defend you, and that agent's going to have to hire an attorney to defend them against whoever's suing. So, big box brokerage, who's got a full legal staff, and their only job is to go after all these ex-employees and file lawsuits and send cease and desist letters, right? It's headaches. Not worth it. So what I would do is, if they have one, have your transportation attorney or your attorney that represents your company, have them review it, weigh your risks, and I would try to settle it with a previous employer if you can. And if not, it may not be in your best interest to bring them on. So like a company like a TQL, man, they're notorious for suing. And eventually, even if they could win, you could win in court, that new agent, they just give up. They're like, I don't have the money to hire an attorney for 12 months, you know, and now I'm worried they're going to sue me for $100,000. It's like, it doesn't usually work out. And the final question was, you know, what kind of contracts or things should I have in place? So your agent contract should, at a minimum, have a good independent contractor portion and a good commission portion, right? So outline again, we're not attorneys at Freight 360. Get with a good attorney that can draft you up an independent contractor contract. I don't even know if we might have one on our. No, I don't think we have one on our website. But every company's different. But it should define the relationship between you as a broker and them as the agent for your brokerage company. What you provide, what they provide, expectations, minimum productivity requirements if you have any, what you're gonna provide for them and what they have to provide themselves, and then that commission part. Explain how much are they getting paid, when are they getting paid, you know, and what happens when X, Y, and Z situations occur. And then, you know, you can run a background check, make sure they're not like a, you know, wire fraud person that's just out there to scam you, because it's hard to vet these people out when you're virtual. Get a W-9, right? Because you have to send them a 1099, so you can call those commissions a expense of yours, right? Yeah, stuff like that. Vet their book of business. Find out, are they trying to bring business to your company that you already have? Are they directly competing with you? Yeah, these are things you got to think about. So put that all. It should all be in your vetting and contract process. So I don't want to get too deep into it. I know we went kind of long-winded on agent stuff, but it's a good question. And my biggest advice is this: if you think bringing on an agent or multiple agents is a get-rich-quick scheme, you're wrong. Don't do it. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's a get-broke-quick situation where you're paying for all this stuff for people, and if they don't produce, you're still paying for it.
I've seen more companies.
Load boards, EMS licenses, you know, possible claims payouts.
I've seen more companies go under for trying to grow too fast. Like there's a saying, it's more companies die of indigestion than starvation. When you get greedy and you think it's nothing but gravy, right? You usually don't realize that you're choking on all of these things that you just didn't add up and spend the time to actually consider. Speaking of which, why don't you give a shout out to our friends over at Lean?
Yeah, so if you are trying to grow and you want to grow the smart way and not just bring a bunch of agents on without any idea how to manage them, look at growing your back office, right? So check out Lean Solutions Group at leangroup.com. Their nearshore staffing model has been fantastic. We use them ourselves for a lot of our administrative functions at Freight 360. They're great for billing folks, dispatchers, account managers, things like that. Any possible job in freight brokerage, they offer staffing solutions for that specific role. So check them out at leangroup.com. You'll save a ton of money. You can get basicly 2 reps for the cost of 1 normal hire here.
And I'll give you a real life example. We talked about this a lot, but my assistant with Lean has been with me since like the end of November. And I would say right now he's probably managing about 85 to 90% of the tasks that I had to do prior to bringing him on, right? So when, you know, owners and people reach out to us and they're like, I just don't have time to get away from my desk. I can't take a vacation. I'm like built this prison I live in, right, of my own making, right? All these customers and all this stuff, but they can't get away from it. This is the stuff that you've got to consider to be able to get your head above water, right? I'm very conscious when I was building my book, you know, the second time was I wanted to get it to a certain level, hire, be able to delegate as much of it as I can so that I can free up the space and time to go out and get more, right? It's truly growing like this. And the greatest part about Lean is the fact that, like, you can literally push this button and within, you know, 4 to 6 weeks, you've got somebody fully functioning and helping take these things off your plate so that you can find time to either consider an agency or get back to prospecting to grow that book of business like you've been wanted to for the past few years.
I've got one of my agents right now that I'm calling back later today, and here's her problem. It's her and her husband, and she's like, I'm stuck. I'm at 10 loads a day myself, and we're moving a lot of freight, and we need help, and I don't know how to hire. And it's a great opportunity to hand off some of those administrative tasks or operational tasks that are holding you from getting more freight. So check them out. All right, 2 questions here. As a dispatcher, and this is a dispatcher that represents carriers, how do I build my carrier base? It's a good question. Same way that brokers have to go build a book of business by cold calling and cold outreach, social media connecting, you're doing the same thing as a dispatcher. I'll tell you, our Facebook group, so check out the episode show notes. I think there's a link in there. If not, just go to Freight Brokers and Carriers Network on Facebook. We got like 25,000 community members. Brokers, dispatchers, carriers, all networking. It's a great way to just grab a bunch of email addresses from carriers and get with them.
Here's a tip too. If you're going to reach out on, our Facebook group, Freight Brokers and Carriers Network, make sure you're asking for specific things. We see people get a lot better answers when they ask better questions, right? So the posts that are in that group that say like, hey, I'm running consistent dedicated lanes from Atlanta to, St. Louis. If you've got an interest, if you're a carrier, drop an email, leave your number, right? You can find these people, right? Because you are going to have to build it step by step, person by person, relationship by relationship, right? It takes time. Expect it to take time, and expect to build this into your daily and weekly schedule so that you're doing this consistently. You're not just going to go and do this one day and have it all done, right? It's something that, just like prospecting, consistency over time is what's going to lead to a solid, reliable, dependable carrier base.
Absolutely. Another carrier sourcing question. This is from a broker, though. How do I find box trucks and sprinter vans? Most of your load boards will still allow you to post and search for things like that, like DAT. You can find box trucks or straight trucks, things like that. There are some niche load boards, so like Selectus. I use it personally. You have to have a carrier MC as well to be able to get in their alliance of their carriers and their brokers that share their capacity and their available freight. So they used to let people in before that were just brokers, but you have to have a broker and a carrier authority now to put brokered loads posted in there. But yeah, just load boards, and then the good old classic cold outreach to carriers. You got to do your searching, whether it's on Google looking for some small hot shot or expedite type equipment. The same thing goes. In this realm, trying to get that business drummed up and those connections drummed
also,
up. Again, networking on
lots in social media.
We have people in our group asking for stuff
You
like
have
that.
lots of smaller carriers that have box trucks that are saving up the money to buy more assets and to buy, larger tractors that are in there constantly. So if you've got loads and a shipper that is looking for these box trucks or sprinter vans often, actually this is the one where I think you probably even maybe more effective to be in a Facebook group trying to acquire some of these names, because they're just not out there. They're not that large, and they don't need to be. Yep,
you're absolutely correct. Everyone scales differently. Not every carrier has an unlimited deep pocket and checkbook where they can just get every single load board available. They're going to start on social media a lot of times. So, good stuff. Well, that wraps up the Q&A section here. I'm going to talk Super Bowl next week because love me some good NFL discussion here. We are approaching baseball season. Spring training starts in about a month. Pitchers and catchers will report at the end of February for most teams. Woo, going right from my Bills to my Red Sox. Sorry, Yankees fans, even though I live in New York. Your Pirates, maybe they'll have a good year. Who knows? So, you got any big? What's the like I said, you're the bigger golf guy than me. When's like the first big tournament?
Honestly, I haven't even gotten up to speed with it yet.
Is it the Masters?
Usually, but kind of with COVID, it kind of threw things all. And they changed the lineup of the majors like over the past 2 years, and I genuinely don't know off the top of my head.
Well, we'll talk about
That
them
we
next
will.
week, I guess. Then you got any closing final thoughts
Yeah,
here?
I wanted to leave, and I'm going to kind of bring up one of these at the end of every episode, which is like one topic that kind of seems a little bit outside of freight brokerage, but isn't, right? And the one that I had picked up in the past week that I've tried to apply is how much of the minutia are you involved with on a daily basis? Whether you're a broker and you're managing a team, just your own customers, or even you own a brokerage, right? Most people, their issues are that they can't get to the bigger things. The stuff that we talked about in this episode, right? Considering maybe entering into the agency model, considering growing these, considering doing these things, right? The reality is you'll never get to the bigger things if you're not delegating and allowing the smaller things to be taken care of by other people on your team. And this is really difficult for perfectionists. And just a good example of this is if you own a brokerage and you've got a couple brokers underneath you and you're approving every charge, $5, $10, $15, $25, $30 charges, look for policies and procedures that you can put in place so that everything isn't going through you. Basically making sure you're not your own bottleneck and you're your own cause of your own misery, right? So just a good question to kind of consider and think about is, what is it that you're doing, right? Are there things that you don't necessarily have to be doing or shouldn't be doing that you should be trusting maybe the person you've brought on, whether it's your assistant, maybe it's someone from Lean, maybe it's just some of the other brokers or other people you work with?
I dig it. And how about your Henry Ford quote?
Whether you
for
believe
us?
you can or believe you can't, you're right.
I couldn't let you get away without dropping that one. And even though the season is over for Buffalo this year, until next time, go Bills. That wraps up this episode of Freight 360. Check out the show notes for links to anything that we've referenced on this episode. And make sure to visit us online at freight360.net to see our entire library of episodes, videos, blogs, and more.
And make sure to check us out on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily and weekly tips and content. And if you'd like your question answered on the show, fill out the Contact Us form on our site, and we'll see you next week.